Good morning. You know, so check out that title. When I come up here, I like to kind of reference back to that title because I don't know how to make a good title. But I do know this, is that idea of rudderless. A rudder is normally associated with a boat. A boat can be a boat without a rudder because really, what does the rudder do on a boat? It steers it, right? You can be a boat because a boat really kind of floats in the water. It holds stuff. But if a boat is not moving in the water, it still doesn't make it a boat, but it's kind of awful just to have a boat just sitting there, nothing happening. So again, I might refer to that a lot, but I just can't think of a better title. But that idea of rudderless is where we're going to be going today. We're going to be all throughout the book because I didn't do a good job at all letting Debbie know which verses we're going to use. So we're not going to see a lot of them up there. But know that we're going to start off in Numbers. Numbers in the Old Testament, right after Leviticus, Numbers 6:22 through 27. If you don't mind turning there, you can read up there, but for some of you who are like me, who like looking at it, like holding on to this, please let's go ahead and look at that together. I'm going to read it to you. If you have your Bible with you, give me a signal that you have actually found it by holding that Bible up for me, letting me know that you have it up. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It says, verse 22. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them," verse 24, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace." Verse 27, so they will put my name on the Israelites and I will bless them. When I hear this verse, I can't help but think about what it was like for me when I was in church. I mean, when I was growing up, again, I will tell you, I did my fair amount of sleeping in church. But in the church I grew up in, it was different because when I would sit out there, it was a church where you had the choir. The choir would stay in the choir loft the whole time. And we would sit out there, and I would see over here, there are two types of choirs. On this side, it was the chancel choir, or I think that's how it's pronounced. I never asked how to really pronounce it, but that's the chancel choir. Those are the older members. On this side was the contemporary choir. These are people like my mother's age. Over here was like my grandmother's age. And the chancel choir, they would sing songs was like just would really touch me. There were grandmothers and grandfathers up there. They knew a little something. They weren't whooping you quite as much as the mamas and daddies, but they knew something. You knew something was going on up there. And so when they would sing this Numbers song, they would sing, "Bless the Lord," or actually that's another song. It's another good song. But this here is, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. And give you peace. The Lord lift his face to shine upon you." And when I would hear that, I knew that things were right. And then I would hear the contemporary choir. The contemporary choir, they sounded more. They had the little beat going, and it sounded okay. Sounded like something I would hear at home. My mom playing on the radio. They sounded very similar. But it didn't have that same power to steer. That chancel choir, there's something, they'd been through life, they knew something. I knew it. I felt there was some leadership there. My boat was being steered by them. I'm thinking about my grandmother. I'd go to her house afterwards. They spent the chancel choir, the chancel choir people, they would get home very quickly. They wouldn't stay after church, at least my grandmother wouldn't, because she would go home and make sure that Sunday dinner was cooked. The temporary choir and the kids would stay a little later. But they were there. The grandma would go home, and we'd go to her house every Sunday. There was food cooked because she was a leader. She knew that people were going to show up hungry. And so when she died a few years ago, there was a sense of rudderlessness, this idea that these people who had lived some life, we're gone. Who's going to be the leader now? My mom and her siblings? They're not so much older than me. Grandma and them, they were the leaders. And I know personally in my life there is this idea, this feeling that sometimes that my life, even though I don't feel like I love the Lord any less, is just set adrift. Let's go back to Numbers. In Numbers, this point here where the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron, show them how to pray. Show them how to pray. Show them how to make sure that my name is known. Because they had just come out of Egypt. They had just been released from Pharaoh. And it was great. The thought of being saved, the thought of my salvation's here. Look at this. The water is parted. The land is dry. Everything is good. It's exciting. This newness is exciting. Now what? So, there was a census. If you do me a favor, if you will look at Numbers verse 1. It's going to seem like a kind of a silly nothing verse. Numbers 1 verse 1. Again, it's not going to be up there, so you're going to have to find your Bibles or going to get cozy with somebody. Well, if you have that, if you find Numbers 1, let me know. I got to know. I see a lot of people with the Bible already. Got to look on with somebody. Thank you. It says here, the Lord spoke to Moses in the tent of meeting in the desert of Sinai on the first day of the second month of the second year after the Israelites came out of Egypt. I'll read it again. The Lord spoke to Moses in the tent of meeting in the desert of Sinai on the first day of the second month of the second year after the Israelites came out of Egypt. It was a very specific day. He knew what he was doing. There was something special about that day. Don't ask me what was special about it, but he wanted that particular day. And on that particular day, he said, you know what? We want to take a census. We want to divide these 12 tribes who've been delivered, and we want to know who the leaders are of this particular group is. And so they found the leaders, they took a census. I'm not sure about you, but if a census taker has been to your house, it takes a long time in 2015. With all this technology, it takes a long time for a census to happen, just simply counting the number of residents in the United States. Back then, of course, it took even longer, and everybody was pretty much together. But ultimately, it says later on in verse 144, the total number of people was 603,550 people. A lot of people. So I'm sure that took a long time. And the reason why that's important is because during this time, there's a lot of time for the newness of things to go away. Oh, we're saved. We're free. So hold on for a second. We can't do anything. Let's make sure that we have the counts right, make sure that we have the people right, make sure that it's going to take a long time. And that newness goes away. And during that newness, that waiting, as Americans, when we say wait, for most of us, a United States citizen, we don't like to wait. Our heritage is trying to get from the East Coast trying to cover all the way to the West Coast. We're always in a position of movement, always in a position to try to take on the new obstacle, trying to overcome something, trying to take in things for ourselves. But right here, while this census was happening, there was no movement. No one was doing anything, and it can get boring. I'm thinking right now about kids. It's hard not to think about kids when you are a daddy. There's a bunch of daddies here, a bunch of grandparents here. But it's also hard not to think about kids when you're a teacher. And I know, for instance, in about 6 days, the next set of state tests are coming around. And I, like any stupid teacher, like asking this silly question. So, what do you think about STAR? What do you think about the state test coming up? And right away, kids answer with the same question. As if they don't understand what the test is for. They'll say, well, the test is boring. Really? So the test is not like so when you put your pen on the paper, fireworks don't come up? The clown doesn't jump out and hit you in the face with a pie? No, the test is boring. I hate sitting there. I hate taking it. You do? Is it important? Yes. They will tell you yes. They will say, this is boring. And the reason why it's boring is because they have to sit. They have to wait. When the test is done, at least in grade school, the test is done, they can't just get up, hey, I'm done, I'm gone, take it easy. At least in most schools. They have to sit, they have to wait for everybody to be done. And it could seem like you are rudderless. You're waiting for something to happen. Oh my goodness, I have to wait. If you'll do me a favor, if you'll turn to John in the New Testament, John chapter 1. Last week during Sunday school, JM walks to my Sunday school class, and JM we start talking briefly. He says, you know, my favorite book of the Bible, JM says, is John. Mine too. Mine too, JM. It's my favorite book. And it's my favorite book because we're going to go briefly over John chapter 1, because I can't preach without saying this verse. But know that ultimately, we're going to be skipping through John. We're going to be going through John to eventually to John chapter 20. We're going to start off in John 1, and we're going to go to John chapter 20. We just come out of season of Easter. In my opinion, the best part of Jesus Christ's life, not his birth as miraculous and as wonderful as that is, it was just leading up to what we celebrated last week. He died, rose again. Death had no hold on him, and he prepared a place for us. He walked with the disciples. After he died, he was alive. He is alive. And how exciting that is. But there was a time where his disciples were absolutely rudderless for about a day or so after his death. He had just showed them that he can calm the seas. He had showed them that he could heal. He had showed them a ton of things. This king who did not have a weapon, he was a king, and they knew it. They felt it. They saw it. And he was dead. And they couldn't fathom what he hinted about when he said the temple was going to be built up again in 3 days. Torn down, and they couldn't fathom that. That was just too much over their heads, too much over our heads in a lot of ways. Anyway, John chapter 1. Remembering this, you can keep your hand on John 20, but John chapter 1, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was with God. I'll say it again. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Verse 2,